Good evening and welcome to the news at 8. I'm Sarah Jacob. Let's get you up to date with the day's headlines. We have to buy more time to vaccinate more and more Indians before we can return to normal. The government says if the containment measures, COVID-19 appropriate behaviour or the vaccination pace slackens, cases can rise again. Those fully vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine to have 5 times lower antibodies against the Delta variant first identified in India, says Lancet's research. What does this mean for the ideal gap to be kept between vaccine doses? India's positivity rate down to almost 7% for the 7th straight day of positivity rates below 10%, but with 2,713 deaths. The daily death average still double that of April. The second wave leaves devastated families in its wake. With the shortage of drugs, beds and oxygen, some had to play God, pick and choose between family members on whom to spend life-saving medicines. Entire families wiped out in Maharashtra. The ferocity of the second wave prompts the RBI to cut India's growth rate to 9.5%, prioritizing reviving growth. The bank keeps interest rates unchanged at 4%, underlines how rapid vaccination is key to economic revival. The GDP revision is along expected lines, may even come down a little bit more. Gautam Singhania tells NDTV survival is key for any company at this point. Kerala's budget focuses on health and medical capacity building. 1,000 crores allocated for COVID vaccines. A liquid medical oxygen plant of 150 metric tons announced. No new taxes, keeping in mind people are reeling under the effects of the pandemic. And after coming under fire from the opposition for selling COVID-19 vaccines to private hospitals at hefty margins, the Punjab government backtracks, cancels the sales, promises an investigation. Let's start with the big picture. With 1.32 lakh new coronavirus cases reported in the last 24 hours, the number of active COVID-19 cases in India has dipped further, possibly to a zone where our existing health infrastructure can handle this. According to the Union Health Ministry, the daily positivity rate has now dropped to 6.37%. However, the average number of daily COVID deaths is still double of what it was last month in April. Today's 7-day average of daily deaths is 3,115. The average number of daily deaths in April was 1,529, with 2,713 new deaths. India's total death toll stands at 3,40,702. And India is also witnessing a declining trend in the weekly and daily positivity rates. India's weekly positivity rate currently stands at 7.27%. This is the 11th consecutive day that we've registered a daily positivity rate less than 10%. Still, it may be a while before one can stop isolating, masking, attending gatherings or parties again. The Union Health Ministry today said that India needs to buy time to ensure that there's a high coverage of vaccines against the coronavirus. Otherwise, cases will start to rise again.
इसको हम धीरे अपना behavior को adjust करेंगे, titrate करेंगे, tightrope walk करेंगे, तो wave छोटी भी होगी, शायद ना भी आए और आगे चलती जाएगी. कहने का मतलब यह है कि we have to buy time, and we want to buy time particularly to ensure that we achieve a high coverage of our vaccine. And in the meanwhile, continue to enforce the tools that my colleague showed just now: testing, tracking, isolation, self-discipline, wearing mask, avoiding gatherings, avoiding parties, eating together in large groups.
And the Delta variant of the COVID-19 or the coronavirus strain first found in India is highly infectious, fast spreading, and drove the savage second surge of COVID-19 in India. A government study has found The Delta variant is, in fact, 50% more contagious than the Alpha strain, the study says. UK's Public Health England, which monitors COVID variants in the UK, has also said that early evidence suggests that there may be an increased risk of hospitalization with this Delta variant compared to the Alpha variant, but they've added that more data is still needed on this. Now, the Delta variant, of course, has emerged as the dominant strain in the UK over the Alpha strain, which was first discovered in Kent, England. And there's more. People fully vaccinated with the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine are likely to have more than 5 times lower levels of neutralizing antibodies against this Delta variant, or the variant first identified in India, compared to the original strain. That is what the latest research published in the Lancet journal has said. So what is the significance of this for us here in India? Well, Gargi Rawat joins us with more on that. So Gargi, what are we supposed to take away from this study specifically about the ideal gap between vaccine doses, because the study supports the plans in the UK to reduce the gap between vaccines to 8 weeks?
That's right, Sarah. It says to reduce the gaps between the vaccine doses so as to build more immunity against the Delta variant. So that is what this latest study that has been published in the Lancet has found, is that they've studied all the variants and the efficacy of the vaccine, Pfizer-BioNTech, against these variants, which is namely Alpha, that's the one that was found first in the UK, Delta, the one that was found in India, and Beta, that was found in South Africa. And they have found that the neutralizing antibodies effectiveness goes down in the face of these variants. That means that the ability to block the virus goes down with the variants, and that is very, very significant, because even though the Delta variant is now the dominant variant in the UK, it is the variant that we have here in India, and it's the same variant that we're dealing with over here. So significantly, they have said, therefore, with 1 dose of the COVID vaccine, that is the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, that the immunity that it provides has gone down in the face of this variant, and therefore you have to reduce the gap between the 2 doses, so to build up more immunity and block this. So this is something here in India that we have to think about, because at this point we have in fact increased the duration between doses of the Covishield vaccine. While this is not talking about the AstraZeneca or Covishield vaccine, the same sort of theory would come into play. One imagines if that in the face of this new Delta variant, if the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, which provides over 90% efficacy, if that is providing you a reduced protection, then what about AstraZeneca that provides around 70% efficacy against the earlier COVID variant for which it was created? But in the face of these new, more aggressive variants, and already, Sarah, you read out about how Public Health England has said that the Delta variant is more infectious, and it even perhaps causes even a worse illness, that is, it's leading to more hospitalization, though they did say that more information is needed. So we have to take all this new information, these studies coming into account, as we are also dealing with COVID here, and we are dealing with the Delta variant.
Thanks, Gargi. Certainly much to think about there. Thanks for that. Meanwhile, the big business story of the day, the Reserve Bank of India has held the repo rate and cut GDP growth rates. This at the end of a 3-day Monetary Policy Committee meeting that began on Wednesday.
The ferocity of India's second COVID wave has prompted the Reserve Bank of India to cut India's growth forecast to 9.5% for the current financial year from 10.5% earlier.
The inflation print for
saying that reviving growth is top priority, the RBI kept interest rates unchanged at 4% and flagged downside risks. The spread of rural infections, followed by decline in demand indicators such as tractor and two-wheeler sales, dent on urban demand, and rising crude prices.
the second measure,
Pointing out how rapid vaccination is key to economic revival, RBI says India is the vaccine capital of the world and called for a policy package to consolidate India's position as the vaccine capital of the world, with leadership in production of pharma products that can change the COVID narrative.
moreover, people and businesses are adapting to pandemic working conditions. The vaccination process is expected to gather steam in the coming months, and that should help to normalize economic activity.
Experts cheer the liquidity measures taken to boost quantitative easing, in particular the Rs 15,000 crore window for hotels, restaurants, tourism, salons affected severely by the lockdowns. They also support the additional rupees 16,000 crore liquidity support for distressed MSME units.
Well, the RBI announcements today was much on the expected lines, well calibrated and balanced. On-tap liquidity of 50,000 crore to contact services and 16,000 crore to Sidbi. What a welcome step. Of course, the challenge remains is how soon they can be put to execution, as transmission of loans remains a key challenge.
The RBI Monetary Policy Committee meets next in 2 months, by when the government says vaccinations will be 1 crore doses a day, up 5 times. States have begun to unlock slowly, even as they prepare for a third wave. Sakshi Bajaj for NDTV.
So how does one do business and revive the economy in a post-COVID world? We spoke with Gautam Singhania, Chairman and MD of the Raymond Group.
After the first wave, once things opened up, we saw a very strong bounce back. And a lot of this demand might get, in my opinion, deferred, but not lost. And I am seeing that whether it is real estate or whether it is fabrics and apparel, sales have started. Albeit slow, it's expected and in line. And obviously, if the first 2 months of the year are virtually shut, the GDP is bound to come down. I would say it might even come down a little more, but that's my layman guess. Yeah, I think survival is the biggest key for any company. And we have to relook at the business, we have to do a cost reset and relook at how we do the same business in a different way.
And even as the RBI made it clear that vaccines will be key to the resumption of economic activity in India, in the financial capital of India, Mumbai, the vaccination drive has slowed down due to a lack of vaccines. And interestingly, private hospitals seem to be managing supplies better than state governments. Sohit Mishra investigates.
The Jumbo Vaccination Centre barely has a crowd now. It's only those who have booked their slots on the CoWIN app are being vaccinated here. Vinayak Kakre has come here from Vasai, 60 kilometers away to get the vaccine. He booked a slot at 2 in the morning. Tanay arrived here with 2 of his colleagues to get the vaccine, saying he would have gone to a private hospital if the vaccine was not available in government hospitals.
1100, 1800, कोई 2000 भी ले रहा है, कोई 800 भी ले रहा है. It's depend on the area and the hospital. ये गलत है कि rates should be uniform. Government ने ध्यान रखना चाहिए.
Initially, we were not getting this slot, so we inquired in the private hospitals. So they also told us that we have to book through CoWIN only. So yeah, we kept trying, and yesterday in the evening, we got this slot for Jumbo COVID Center.
Some have not been so lucky, like Aisha D'Souza. In spite of her best efforts, that vaccine slot has been elusive.
The site kept getting filled up or it kept getting hung very fast. I also personally visited Bombay Hospital and Women's Graduate Hospital for the vaccination. I waited for a long time, but there were no vaccinations available.
On 4 days till 2nd June, private vaccine centres accounted for over 3 of every 4 doses given. Government centres accounted for just 23% of all 240,000 doses. Local officials say the centre system decides this. They have no role.
50% केंद्र शासन अपने पास रखता है, 50% में राज्य शासन और निजी अस्पतालों को भी उन्होंने कोटा दे रखा है. बीएमसी का उसमें कोई रूल नहीं, सिर्फ हमने जैसा केंद्र शासन ने हमको ये कहा था इनको परमिशन दो, तो उनको सीबीसी, प्राइवेट सीबीसी हमने डिक्लेयर किया है, प्राइवेट कोविड वैक्सीनेशन सेंटर उनको हमने अलाउ किया है.
More vaccines in private hospitals often plays into class divide, as those who can afford to pay get the vaccine. On the other hand, for the poor who has been hardest hit due to the COVID restrictions, it is often impossible to pay for the vaccine. In Mumbai, with camera person Rajendra Dayalkar, Sohit Mishra, NDTV.
And after a backlash, the Punjab government has backtracked, withdrawing an order where it allowed the sale of vaccines to private hospitals. Vaccine doses are now being recalled from private hospitals after the opposition highlighted how these vaccines were sold at higher rates than they were procured. The opposition has accused the government of diverting vaccines at hefty margins.
Amid shortage of vaccine at government-run centres, a long queue at the Fortis Hospital in Mohali.
कुछ टाइम पहले तक तो अभी यही था, गवर्नमेंट हॉस्पिटल्स में 45 प्लस की वैक्सीनेशन हो रही थी और प्राइवेट में 18 प्लस. तो इसी इम्प्रेशन से फोर्टिस में हमने अपॉइंटमेंट जब भी खुली तो हमने उसमें ले ली.
But will private hospitals too run out of vaccines soon? In a U-turn, the state government has withdrawn an order for selling vaccines to the private hospitals. The decision came after the state's move was criticized. Punjab received 1.14 lakh co-vaccine at rupees 420 per dose. 40,000 doses were sold to private hospitals at rupees 1,060 per dose. The private hospitals fixed the rate at rupees 1,560 per dose. The Punjab government made a profit of over 2 crores.
मैं strongly सख्त लफ्ज़ां नाल ऐ सरकार ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਨਿੰਦਾ ਕਰਦਾ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਜਲਦੀ ਹੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਜੇ ਲੋੜ ਪਈ ਜੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਵਾਪਸ ਸਾਰਾ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਹਾਈ ਕੋਰਟ ਵੀ ਜਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਤੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਇਨਕੁਆਇਰੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਊਗੀ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਲੁੱਟਿਆ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ.
Quoting the NDTV report, the Union Health Ministry wrote to the Punjab government asking them to respond to the sale of vaccines. After first claiming to be unaware of the alleged scam and saying the Chief Secretary was responsible, the State Health Minister later withdrew the order.
जो कोई फैसला हुआ कल आज उसको हमने वापस ले लिया और बकायदा जितनी वैक्सीन के स्टॉक में है वो सारी हम वापस लेंगे प्लस जो उन्होंने यूटिलाइज की है उसकी भी हम वापस लेंगे.
Though the state is yet to respond to the centre's letter asking them about the details of the entire vaccine selling controversy, but it certainly looks poor as far as vaccine management is concerned in Punjab at a time when the state is reporting highest COVID fatality rate. In Chandigarh, Mohammad Ghazali for NDTV.
And as the second wave subsides, stories are emerging from the villages of Maharashtra of devastated families destroyed by the second wave, financially and emotionally. Some even ill-fated with having to play God, pick and choose between sick family members. With a shortage of drugs, beds and oxygen, having to choose between whom to treat.
68-year-old Mohammad Hanif Sheikh from Tembhurli village in Solapur is no more. His 7-member family is now down to just 2. 5 died after contracting the COVID infection. Only his son Bhaiya Sheikh and 16-month-old granddaughter survived.
इन 9 दिनों के अंदर मेरे घर में 5 लोग इस दुनिया से जा चुके हैं, मगर कोरोना से जाने से ज़्यादा इनको इलाज जो सही नहीं मिला है दवाखानों में, अस्पतालों में, इससे लोग मरे हैं.
Abhilash from Puntamba village in Ahmednagar has come with his sister-in-law and nephews to offer flowers at the graves of his 4 family members. Between 21st April and 5th May, he lost his mother, elder brother and 2 maternal uncles to COVID. He says he could not find remdesivir on time, which could have saved the lives of his mother and brother. He had to choose who would get the life-saving medicine, as he could not find enough doses for both.
डॉक्टर लोग पहले से बोल रहे थे रेमडेसिविर लाओ, रेमडेसिविर इंजेक्शन लाओ. कहाँ से रेमडेसिविर लाओ? रेमडेसिविर कहीं पर भी नहीं मिला. एक रेमडेसिविर मिला, डॉक्टर के पास गया, एक मिला. डॉक्टर बोल रहा है इधर तेरी माँ है, इधर तेरा भाई है, अभी क्या करने का तू ही बता, किसको बचाने का, क्योंकि दोनों भी मरने वाले. किसको बचाने का तेरे हाथ में. मेरे कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा था. मैं बोला डॉक्टर मैं कुछ भी नहीं बोल सकता, आपको जैसा करने का आप वैसा करो.
But perhaps the most tragic story is of the Zimur family from Shirshi village in Sangli district. No one survived. Sahadeva contracted COVID and then his wife Sushila too. Their son Sachin, who is a software engineer, returned from Mumbai to support them. He also caught the disease and in a span of 13 hours, all 3 died.
माझे सासू सासरे आणि माझा दीर जो माझा सचिन छोटा ह्यांची परवा दिवशी प्राणज्योत मावली. खास करून माझ्या पतीचे 2 हात असणारे त्यातला उजवा हात निकळलेला आहे. आम्ही पूर्ण जिमूर कुटुंबीय कोलॅप्स झालेला आहोत.
COVID has impacted lives of people in unfathomable ways, but perhaps these families that have lost their loved ones feel the impact of the second wave of the pandemic the most. These 3 families have lost multiple members to COVID. Their grief is perhaps yet another reminder as to why people need to take precautions seriously and follow COVID norms in these difficult times. With Sunil Singh in Mumbai, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
Could things have been different? Will lessons be learned? Well, in the midst of this pandemic, the first budget of the new Kerala government has a huge focus on health and medical capacity building, which includes the setting up of pediatric wards in anticipation of the third wave. While the budget also focuses on the revival of tourism, which has been badly hit by the pandemic, no new taxes have been announced. Sneha Merikoshi tells you why.
കേരളത്തിന്റെ 13ാം പദ്ധതിയുടെ സമാപന വർഷമാണ് 2021-22.
The first budget of Pinarayi Vijayan government 2.0. 12% of the modified total expenditure devoted to tackling COVID and reviving the economy. 2.3% of the gross state domestic product. As of today, Kerala is the only big state where the 2-week death count is doubling, despite having a renowned healthcare system.
രണ്ടാം തരംഗത്തിന്റെ സമ്മർദ്ദത്തിനിടയിലും കേരളത്തിന്റെ മുൻകരുതലും ദുരന്ത പ്രതികരണ ശേഷിയും പ്രശംസിക്കപ്പെടുകയുണ്ടായി. എന്ന് മാത്രമല്ല, നമുക്ക് മറ്റ് സംസ്ഥാനങ്ങളെ സഹായിക്കാനും കഴിഞ്ഞു. പക്ഷേ രണ്ടാം തരംഗത്തിന്റെ വേഗതയും തീവ്രതയും ഒപ്പം മൂന്നാം തരംഗത്തിന്റെ സാധ്യതയും സൂചിപ്പിക്കുന്നത് യുദ്ധം അവസാനിച്ചിട്ടില്ല എന്നാണ്.
This 20,000 crore COVID package, according to the government, includes allocation for health, income transfers and economic revival. There's no new tax which has been announced this time, government says, because of the livelihoods that have been affected. And focus on medical capacity building amid a pandemic, with 1,000 crores for purchase of vaccines for above 18 to be provided free to beneficiaries. 25 crores initial allocation for pediatric ICUs to be increased in all districts ahead of COVID third wave. Isolation wards to be set up in key government hospitals across Kerala to treat airborne diseases like COVID, Ebola. 25 lakhs initial allocation for 150 metric tons liquid medical oxygen plant, 1,000 metric tons storage tanks, tanker for emergency transport through tenders.
You have to see the estimate. Then there is a column of additional expenses. Additional expenses is only for 1,715 crores. Where is the 20,000 crores?
The budget envisions long-drawn plan to revive a battered tourism sector with proposed tourism cultural biodiversity circuits and help rehabilitate over 14 lakh non-resident Keralites who returned home.
Government has also agreed to look at various schemes to support the tourism industry. That's a welcome step. So this time we have requested the government to declare the tourism as an industry so that the banking sector will give priority.
Reviving livelihoods and the economy, a major challenge before the Pinarayi Vijayan government. With camera person SP Babu, Sneha Koshi for NDTV.
And here's another COVID fallout. The global food price index has soared to a 10-year peak. Global prices of vegetable oil, sugar and cereals have skyrocketed. The COVID-19 pandemic, of course, led to food security related concerns globally. And now the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, has reported a surge in international prices of vegetable oils, sugar and cereals. Global food prices rose rapidly in May, reaching the highest value since September 2011, even as world cereal production is on course to reach a new record high.